YouTube, and we're good to go. So once again, thanks for joining us tonight. We're here with Joseph from Zelie Beans. Am I saying that correctly? Zelie?
Zelie.
Zelie.
Zelie like jelly.
Zelie like jelly. Zelie Beans Coffee Roasters here in Houston, Texas. And we're going to talk a little bit tonight about small batch coffee roasting. And if you've watched the previous 2 episodes, or if you're new to our channel, I want to thank you for checking us out. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell so you know when we go live, or you know when I post a new video. That's really important to us here at Roasters Marketplace. Let me move my mic a little bit. Next up, though, thanks for showing up, Joseph. I know you're busy. I know you got those 3 little girls that you're running behind all the time. I'm waiting for one of mine to bust through the green screen tonight. But
we'll just roll with it. You just roll with it.
Yeah, as long as they're clothed. If I drop off automatically, everybody will understand, I guess. So Joseph, give us a little bit about your background, where you're from, what you do, and how you got introduced to specialty coffee.
So it was a sunny day in California in 1983 when I was born on New Year's Day. Oh wait, you didn't want me to go that far back, did you?
No.
Okay, sorry. So my background, I grew up in a small town just north of Houston, not far from you, Chris. I grew up in Tomball, Texas.
Okay.
I fell in love with coffee at a young age. I was probably like 8 or 9 years old when I started drinking coffee with a lot of cream and sugar, but I still loved it, and fell in love with the second wave coffee, Starbucks, mochas, lattes, all that kind of stuff. Got a job at a small second wave coffee shop in Tomball, Texas. No longer there. Zebo's Coffee House. That and I that's when the first time I actually got to try single origin Kenyan AA coffee. That I realized oh, there's more to coffee than just mochas and caramel lattes and macchiatos and all that kind of stuff. So that was my first experience with getting into kind of the specialty coffee realm. Fast forward probably about 5 or 6 years, I online somewhere, I don't even remember how I discovered this, but I found out that you could roast coffee at home. And I watched the previous episode with a gentleman from Unrest, and he said it was in a conversation with someone else that found out you could roast at home. I kind of went down the same path with him. I bought a little Be More roaster machine that looks like a little toaster oven with a little thing that rolls around, and I started roasting coffee. That was back in 2008. Would get probably about a pound to 5 pounds, 10 pounds at most at a time, and I would be roasting coffee all by myself. Then fast forward even further, I get married. I got married. My wife and I got married in just almost 6 years ago now. When we moved into our new house, I had put away my Be More, my little roaster, and brought it back out once we had our own house, because it makes a lot of smoke and stuff like that. So it wasn't good for an apartment. So I needed to have my own space to do it. So I started roasting just for my wife and myself. Before it got to the point that she couldn't drink any other coffee, and that's when I knew I was onto something, that the coffee was actually good. It wasn't just me. And get to a point where you said you're introducing me. I have 3 little girls. We were expecting number 3. I was working in a church at the time. My wife is a teacher at a Catholic high school. We did not have enough money for baby number 3 at the time, but trying to think of schemes and side hustles and what to do to make enough money. And my wife said, "Why don't you start selling your coffee?" I literally at that moment thought she was the craziest person alive. But I said, "Okay, I'll look into it." At the time, I was thinking I was going to look into it, realized how much it cost, and that it was no way I was going to make it happen. About that same time was the local coffee shop here in Sugar Land opened up, called Blendin Coffee Club. And I was talking to the owner about what he was doing, how he did it, and telling about what my hopes were, what I was planning on doing. I'm really long-winded, Chris, so if I
No, you're
keep
good.
on
You're
going.
good. No, it's the story. It's the story.
And he started asking me questions like, where are you planning on storing the coffee? What do you plan on doing with it? And I was like, well, I'm trying to figure all that out. And he said, oh, if you want to start roasting, you can start roasting here. He offers the SBA courses, the roasting classes, all the SBA courses. And you can start roasting here for a fee. And I was like, oh, okay. So you're telling me, and like, I literally stopped him and like, wait a second, are you sure I can do this? Oh, good job putting a link up there. Linden
Yep.
Coffee Club.
Yep.
Great
That's what I was
people.
looking for. That's what I was looking for. Awesome
And
people.
yeah, great people, really know their stuff. And it was too perfect to pass up. So I could basically, without like thousands and thousands of dollars of overhead, I was able to get into a space storing coffee, roasting coffee with educational purposes and like everything there. It was too good to pass up. And our second child, second girl, is named Zelie. And one of the days we were like, create pet names. And so one of the days I was like, hey, Zelie Bean, let's go. And she was like a toddler. And I was like, and I literally stopped and I turned to my wife and I'm like, Zelie Bean, Zelie Beans Coffee. That's the name of the coffee business. Her first reaction is like, what are you going to tell Evelyn, our oldest daughter? And I was like, well, we'll figure something out. Like, I don't know, we'll figure it out.
It's much more creative than how we got our name. So,
but and everything just seemed to be coming together, working out. I took the SBA Foundation course in roasting. I got started. I got the green coffee I needed to do, and I just started roasting. And I literally like went on Facebook, sent the thing like, "Hey, who wants to be the first people to try my coffee? $10 a bag." And very early, just testing the water, seeing what people thought, and people liked it. Kind of continued, and then from there, like that was that 2 years ago, a year and a half, almost 2 years ago now. So yeah, here we are. Here I am talking to you, Chris.
Nice. I'm going to back you up a little bit to explain a few things. I can go into explain it, but I think it'll come back to you since you've got way more time in coffee than I do. Tell our audience what you meant by second wave or second generation.
Oh, good. I kind of say things without realizing. So there's in coffee, there's kind of like this. They kind of break up history, like recent history of coffee, in three waves. Three waves. First wave was kind of like the canned coffees, like the Folgers, and that was like the first, because before canned coffees, it was actually. Oh, I wish I had it here. I found this. This on the side. I'm sorry, Chris. This is, no, but it'll be. It's tied. It's cool. Before they had canned coffees, if you wanted coffee, usually you lived near a port city and you'd buy green coffee and you'd roast it in your house and you'd drink it in your house. Reason why I know this is I found an old historical cookbook that was from New Orleans, and it's this amazing thing. It was like I got really into like Black American history and like equal rights and like all this kind of stuff. So I got really interested in this. And I saw this like a historical from like she or like former slave woman like owned kitchens, and like she was in like this cookbook that she created. And there's first within the first chapter it has a thing about coffee, and she talks about sourcing coffee and finding the right type of green coffee and how to roast it. And so that's almost like a the zero wave, like because there wasn't really a wave. Like the first wave was the canned coffee or instant coffee, different things like that. Second wave kind of started off with Peet's Coffee and Starbucks Coffee, which kind of brought more wider sense of like coffee, like the mochas and lattes and cappuccinos, espressos, all this kind of stuff, along with like, hey, French roast coffee and like buying coffee by the whole beans and stuff like that. and then there's third wave coffee, which tends to be more focused on single origin coffee, specialty coffee, small, like a higher grade of coffee. We get a specialty coffee. When I say specialty coffee, there's a grading system within coffee of up to 100 points, like a score of 100. And anything, it varies from what I've read, but anything from 80 or 83 up is considered specialty coffee. Anything below that is considered commodity coffee. Commodity coffee is typically goes to Folgers and community roasts and things like that.
Yeah.
I'm long-winded. There you go, Chris.
That's perfect. That's the exact explanation that we needed to share with some of our viewers might not know that. They might, that's why we started the show, is to
I nerd out.
is to educate people who might want to know more about their coffee, and that's why we're here. So you got into it kind of as a hobby. I'm catching up because we covered a lot of my list here.
Yeah, I'm long-winded. I like to talk a lot.
You're good. No, you're good. It's perfectly fine.
And hopefully people are listening that can ask questions too. I like impromptu questions.
We've sent the request out. We're on my Facebook feed as well as Roasters Marketplace's feed, so we should be getting some feedback off.
I'm also trying to keep track of my own feeds as well to see if anybody comments or asking questions too. So
nice. When you started roasting, let's see, how do you start your process typically? When you get, I talked to you a little bit about before you launched your Evelyn's Espresso, right?
Yeah.
And that process of you getting it right, walk me through. Do you just go get some green and then you roast it, or you go to a cupping? How do you decide which path you're going to take with your next roast?
So I guess for me, always the first step is the sourcing the coffee. Where we get the coffee matters a lot for me and Zelie Beans Coffee. I only source my coffee from typically smaller family-owned farms because we are kind of like a mission-based coffee roasting company. I say we is me, but we're mission-based in the sense that our mission statement is families helping families through specialty coffee. When I first started learning more and more about coffee and learning about how the history of coffee, I can go on, and I don't want to bore people, so I will try to be very succinct about this, is that coffee, unfortunately, some parts of coffee has a nasty past. Like some slave trade situation was part of that and everything, and then taking advantage of natives in different parts of the world, from the Dutch colonists kind of bringing coffee over to the New World, all that kind of stuff, and into today where coffee farmers get less than $1 a pound sometimes for coffee, for the stuff that the amount of work they put in. A lot of times getting up at 4 or 5 in the morning every morning, going out there working 10, 12, 13, 14 hours a day, and they can't make enough money for their families.
Yeah.
To the point where going to the city and getting a minimum wage job in the countries that they would make more money doing that than they would if they stayed on a farm. And so I believe in families. I believe in caring for families. I think family is best when they can stick together as much as they want to and as much as they're able to. I want families to be able to provide a living that allows their children and grandchildren to continue to work on the farm should they wish to kind of produce great coffee and make a good living off of it. So my first step is kind of find coffee some families and that are trying to break out of commodity coffee into specialty coffee. So that's kind of my first step. Um, because without that step, like I'm not gonna try like there's great coffee out there. There's great coffee, great large farms doing great work. But I want to highlight and share the stories of these families with these people.
Right.
Everyone that's watching this, they're going to watch this.
Yeah.
So
And you can actually find those descriptions up under your products on our website and your website as well. And I'm going to touch on one thing that you talked about there, and the amount of work that these farmers put in on just getting. Let's use the 12-ounce bag of coffee for an example, right? And let's just imagine that all that math equals out to that 1 pound that they get harvested off of one tree. It takes one tree a whole year to produce that 12-ounce bag, and it's actually more trees than that. I mean, it's way more trees than that. But
mm-hmm.
if you think about that one farmer tending that one coffee bush or tree, depending on how big it is, for a whole entire year, for you to just get that one bag of 12-ounce coffee, there's so much work that goes in it, because it's up on the steep mountainside, and they're having to haul up fertilizer and water and protect them in different from different pests and everything. And there's so much work that goes into that one bag of coffee, and then they get, in some instances, less than $1 a pound for it. Depends on how big of an operation and how good the coffee is. And a lot of places you'll see that they're transitioning to different spices. They're not even growing coffee anymore, because they can raise cardamom and get much better prices for that than they can. But when they're able to invest in the coffee and invest in the farm and produce better coffee and get people like you or some of my other roasters, or people that are sourcing it as direct as possible, then they're getting $3, $4, $5 a pound for this excellent coffee, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to 86 cents. And it's just so important that we share that message, that not only are they helping you out as a small business when they purchase your coffee or buy, but it trickles down so much more to these small farming communities all over the
Yeah,
world that are really producing some fantastic coffee for us.
yeah,
Uh, and that's my rant on
yeah. No, it's a rant that
coffee.
needs to be repeated over and over again
Yeah,
because there's so many people that just don't know.
yeah,
They don't know where the coffee's coming from, and it's not necessarily their fault. I mean, you and I were ignorant of it before at some point. I mean, there was still time. I remember, like, I thought I was doing a better job by getting whole bean coffee out of the big bin at like the local HEB or something here in Texas, grocery
not
store.
not to anger HEB, their coffee's
No, it's
awesome,
but
but
there's I wonder. I mean, and it goes back to like that's not their mission and that's not their goal.
yeah,
Their goal as a grocery store, as a great grocery store, HEB, I love. Like they, their goal is to provide a good product at a good price for the average public person. Um, and I understand Zelie Beans and most specialty coffee roasters are not going to be for everyone. But as many people that we can introduce to specialty coffee and get them to try it and fall in love with it, and not just the coffee itself, but the people behind the coffee that made this coffee amazing. As you said, like they do all this work. They're on steep hillsides, mountaintops, high elevations, doing this great work. Um, they deserve to be compensated a livable wage, at the very least, a livable
yeah,
wage, one that they can put their children in school and maybe their children and grandchildren can go to university and get degrees, and then come back to the farm and make their coffee even better. Is that
yeah,
is
yeah.
that like unreasonable? Like, I don't think so. Like,
It's a good mission. It's a great mission. Um, when we Now we're going fast forward. We're going back to you and the roasting process a little bit more.
yeah.
Um, what's your favorite part of the roasting process. I know we've talked about this before too. Uh, and I've even been texting you and you're like, hold on, this is it. It's coming up. So what's your favorite part of the roasting process?
There's so the whole process is very it's very exciting for me. Well, I shouldn't say the whole part. There's a part that like the most exciting part for me is developing the roast profile for each individual coffee. Um, each coffee is very unique depending on where it's grown, elevation, and everything else like that. And then based off of those aspects, determines how you roast it to get the best flavors out of it. And I'm not just talking about whether you roast it light, medium, or dark. I'm also talking about like how much heat do you start with? When do you bring in air into the cycle? Like all these little things that like little changes in a matter of 10 seconds difference and 4 or 5 degrees Celsius difference can like really change the end result of the coffee and how it tastes in the cup. And so my goal is to like, so that's my favorite part is like tweaking and like starting out with like, I know there's a good flavor in the coffee and there's a matter of like trying to get like not just good, but great and excellent flavors out of it. Because the better I do with that, that means the better I'm serving the growers and producers because they put all that work in it. I might as well be putting as much work into developing that same coffee to make it as delicious as possible. That's my favorite part of it because there's so much tinkering and playing around with it. I could roast the same coffee. I think with the El Salvador, I roasted 3 or 4 times on the small roaster, and then 4 to 6 times on a large roaster before. So probably a total of like almost 10 times before I got the profile that I thought was really really good, and I'm really proud of it. It's
And I'm
really
I'm showing
exciting.
a picture right now off your Facebook feed here of your one of your coffee cups and the roaster
Yeah,
here at blended in. So I kind of everybody. I need to get some more pictures of some roasters so we can talk about what exactly that
yeah.
we're doing there.
Just as well as you put that back up there.
Okay.
So like the average person probably has never seen like a coffee roaster. They think of roasting like if you roast like a chicken or roast a duck in an oven. That coffee doesn't roast the same because you coffee has to be moving the whole time because if it stays stagnant, it's going to roast unevenly. So you see right here, if you look to the upper left hand side of my hand in the coffee mug, you see
Yep.
that little flap left there. Yeah, that's where the coffee comes out of. Inside there is a drum that rotates the entire time as the coffee is roasting or cooking. Hot air is in there. There's flames underneath the drum, and it's constantly rotating. And having you hear the beans flopping around in there and going around the whole time for like 13 to 15 seconds. And then when it's finally done, it drops out of there. And so depending on so many variables can change the flavor notes of the coffee.
It's a really neat process, and one of these days I'm going to get down there and do some GoPro and some high res
Do
video of
some
you
B-roll, do
going
some
through it.
B-roll.
Yeah, get some B-roll of it, and talk about you as it goes through. If I had, I at some point, I'm sure I'm going to roast some coffee, but that's way down the road. Uh,
I mean,
do you have any certain? I asked Brian this last week. Do you have any roasting rituals that you do? Anything that you plug into the earbuds? Anything?
no, I tend to be so something about me is I'm actually partially deaf in my right ear. And hearing is very important during the roasting process because there's the noises you hear, but there's a point in the roasting process that the coffee makes a popping sound. It's or crack. It's the first and second crack. It sounds like popcorn in the microwave as it's popping, and it's important to be listening for that. So I don't like since I'm already partially deaf in my right ear. I try to really pay attention to the sound. So I don't listen to anything. Um, I try to pay attention to what's happening in the roasting process. But I get easily distracted. So if I have like my social media up, I'll see that. If you go to my Instagram page, you'll see I'll do like a live, probably once a month. I'll do like a live video while I'm roasting, just like in the midst of it. Um, and it's just get like it's, you can kind of see what's happening there. Maybe I'll do one this next Monday, and we can maybe I can figure. Can anyways, we'll talk about that later, Chris. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, no, we'll figure it out. Yeah, there's different ways to live stream on different things. This one that I'm using right now, you can do YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn, but you can't do Instagram at this point.
But that's where all the millennials are.
Well, it all depends on what everybody's. YouTube's crazy. I'll get into those demographics later on, but it's amazing.
Yeah.
What's your favorite way? This brings up a question I was going to say, or something I was going to say earlier. All the work that you put into the coffee, and all the work that the farmers put into the coffee, and this is kind of, and I've been kind of a little bit overzealous, I guess you could say, on some of this stuff where I'm like, why are you not weighing your coffee when you make the coffee? And you can do all that work to get to the end point, and then somebody, maybe they don't know any different way of making the coffee, and it turns out bad, and they're like, well, this coffee's horrible. Well, how did you make it? Well, how much did you use? And so that brings me into my next question. What is your favorite way to brew your favorite coffee? If you have a favorite coffee, or your favorite way to brew.
Well, right now I'm really digging the El Salvador or the espresso blend, the Evelyn's espresso blend, because like I like a good espresso or flat white. So for me, I like espresso. To me, like kind of like shows like the intense, like the will highlight any of the great characters, but also will highlight any flaws that are in a coffee typically. So if it's a little bit roasty, whenever you're doing a pour over on it, it's going to be especially roasty as an espresso. If it's kind of acidic as a pour over, it's going to be very acidic as an espresso. So I like to have an espresso to kind of like, that's where you can kind of tell like, oh, like, is it well rounded? Does it have just enough acidity and sweetness to kind of like pop through on an espresso, or with milk, a flat white? So for me, like right now, I'm really digging the El Salvador, especially as an espresso or a flat white or cortado, because like the deep, rich chocolatey notes on it are just come through so much. Like the first time I had some local shop, like I take my coffee all over the local shops in Houston and have the baristas, managers, other people try them out and everything. The first time they brewed it up as espresso, I had them do it as espresso, and it was good. And I was like, can you do it as a cortado as well? Cortado has like a couple shots of espresso and just a little bit of milk, not a lot. Steamed milk, I should say, hot steamed milk. And I kid you not, it was like drinking a Dutch hot cocoa with some coffee flavor in it. It was so delicious. It was so amazing. So if anybody out there likes to do espressos, the El Salvador comes through amazingly as an espresso.
So we've got our first question of tonight, and I'm going to show it up on the screen here if it works right. All right. So Julian says,
how cool is that?
Julian says, so I've recently got into higher end bourbon whiskeys and have been learning about the different flavor profiles: leather, oak, vanilla, etc. Far superior than regular called whiskeys. Coffee is the same, I'm sure. Which profiles do you prefer and look for in some of your favorite coffees? So I'm going to jump in on that one.
Yeah.
So when I wake up in the morning, I've got a bad sweet tooth. So I want something really, really dark, and I'm going to put some heavy cream, and I'm going to put some sugar in it. or some honey, or some some natural processed sugar that has some different molasses character to it. Uh, but what I really want is those really rich, earthy, grainy, roasted, like toast flavors or chocolate flavors that are coming through the coffee. And that's usually my first morning cup. So my first morning cup is your typical dark breakfast blend or your typical dark roasted coffee a lot of times. The But I've been experimenting with the different the fermented coffees, the honey process, the black honey, the yellow honey process, and those I don't like cream and sugar in. Those I like maybe a Chemex pour over later on in the day for a nice cleaner cup, where the flavor profile's more light and not necessarily relaxing because it is coffee, but it's just got a different feel. I mean, I can do one of those other coffees in the morning, but I'd a lot rather have a darker, maybe a medium roast coffee with some cream and sugar in it to blend it out first thing in the morning. That's my sweet tooth. I quit smoking about it's
Are you
2000.
looking at your watch?
No, I'm looking at the calendar, what year it is. So in 2013, I quit smoking.
Oh,
And
okay.
before that, I never had a sweet tooth. And I went from cigarettes to sweet tooth. So I've replaced it with something probably just as bad for you with sugar. Uh, but hopefully, Julian, that kind of answered your question on that. If you look at it, I'll go find it here in a minute, or I'll share it with you. There's a flavor wheel
Hmm.
done by the Specialty Coffee Association, and there's like 260 or 340 or something different flavor notes that you can identify in coffee. Way more than wine. I know some people get upset. Way more than whiskey, but there's just more varieties to it that those flavors really come out from everything from lemon and lime on an Ethiopian or one of the floral coffees from Africa to some really dark, almost rubbery accents that you get from like a dark roasted coffee. Uh, Joseph, for
Um,
you?
I'm similar. I have a strong sweet tooth as well. I don't drink sugar in my coffees, but I like cream. I like milk in my coffees or cream. But for me, I go back to African coffees a lot. I like those really high acidic, very sweet coffees. Sometimes, so you get some floral notes, as you said, jasmine. You get some and there's this. I'm trying to remember which coffee it was, but it had um, growing up, my grandmother used to eat grapefruit, and I hated grapefruit because it was like sour tart and everything. It was just too much. But there was this coffee I had, and it was if I had ever tasted, if I well, never did, but if I would have ever had a sweet grapefruit, the grapefruit's like the flavor but sweetness to it, and not like this acidic tartness. That's what this coffee would have been like, and it was so amazing. Um, uh, those are the type of coffees I tend to like most. But I like finding coffees that have very subtle flavors. I like some of the nutty flavored ones that have some subtle nut flavored coffees and stuff like that. Um, but those are the kind of things I typically go for. So,
Yeah, and it's kind of amazing. So when I get a bag of coffee, so if Joseph roasts my coffee on Monday and I open up my mailbox because it's made its way from South Houston to here in a day, and from the time I open that coffee to the time I finish that coffee, the flavors of that coffee change. It
hmm
really does change. What I you might get that first day after you open the coffee might not be the same because it loses character, but not necessarily in a bad way. When you're talking about 4 or 5 days or 7 days, when it's still been in that 1 to 3 week window of when it's roasted, and it's kind of amazing to see the notes that you get on day one as opposed to notes you get on day 5. Coffee doesn't last long in this house. We drink a lot of coffee, but it's amazing to see what character comes out on day one, or from the different way that you brew it. Because me and you had the conversation uh, when I did a French press with your El Salvador. Oh, I don't. Here we go. I hit the wrong button. We don't want JJ Watt breaking down my door, Julian. I'll hold that off on that one. We're bad mouthing HEB. It might get us some press though. So
I'm not bad mouthing them. I'm not trying to.
Yeah.
That's just like our grocery store that we go to. That's the one I see, and I'll go walk down the coffee aisle every now and then and just see. But normally we don't even go down the coffee aisle because that's not. But every now and then I'll go down and just. Honestly, I'm not even like really looking at brands or anything. I'm just trying to see how much they're charging per pound, and I just know the I know margins within the coffee industry, and I just know like it's like I I wonder how much is getting to the farmers and growers, and that just concerns me. But I don't mean I love HEB. That's the only place we shop.
I know
we don't shop anywhere else.
Yeah, I actually know some of our cashiers by name because they know the girls, and so every day when we go out, we say bye to them. And my wife looks at me like I'm crazy. Like, how do you know them? I was like, I see them twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week, even. So we'll move on.
When you're out at cheese sticks, you've got to get cheese sticks. Otherwise, they will have a riot.
So Julian mentioned HEB coffee. I'm not crazy about coconut on its own or in desserts, but I love HEB's Houston blend with pecans and coconut. So I like it. He likes it black. There's some different ways to add flavor to coffee. At this point, we don't have any flavored coffees because there's a couple different techniques to do that. We do have a couple blends that do add actual pecans and vanilla beans to the coffee. That's one way of doing it. I had some Brian from Unrest, his winter blend. He put some real spices in it, and it is fantastic that way. So we've talked about the favorite way to brew your roast. Do you have a current favorite roast that's not yours?
I went by Fixed Coffee Bar, one of the coffee shops that will have me as a guest roaster. They don't have any of my coffee right now, but I went by there because Java Pura, local coffee roaster, has a new Costa Rican, which is it's an anaerobic processed coffee, which I don't know as much about, but I had it as a pour over, Chemex pour over, and it was really, really tasty. Good sweet notes, really like some good cherry with a little bit of tartness to it. That I really, really liked a lot. So that was one recently that I've tried that I liked a lot.
I think I muted you for a second, but I didn't lose much of it. So Java Pura.
They have a new Costa Rican that's like anaerobic process, so not quite natural. I don't know as much about that. I need to research it out a little bit more.
Yeah, there's some, and on that note, they do some different ways to get the coffee cherry to the coffee pit, because it's actually a pit, not a bean. There's some different ways they do that, and a lot of the times they're referred to as washed or natural processed or fully washed. You can find those details on our website a little bit, and on the descriptions, and you can search by it, or honey processed, where they take the peel off, but they leave some of the fruit, and then it ferments. And there's doing some really cool fermentation to where, like you said, they eliminate the oxygen from the fermentation process and for so many hours, and it really gives the coffee a distinct character. And there's just so much really cool stuff that the third wave of coffee is allowing coffee growers to do all over the world, and find out different techniques of it and different ways of brewing that brings it out. I'll put some links down in the comments later on the YouTube, where you can go back and you can find these other roasters that Joseph's talking about, or the locations where Joseph's beans are able to get, other than my website and his website, because I'm all about supporting everybody that we can in this game. The next question we've got: for someone new to fresh roasted coffee, what would you recommend they try or do to get into this a little bit more? Not necessarily a roasting part, but the adventure that specialty coffee drinking is.
I say try different things. Try different roast profile, like medium, light, medium, dark. Try them. Try to do it as do the best you can to find like maybe if you have local coffee shops around you that do different roasters that do have different coffees, see what you can do about that kind of stuff. Talk to the barista. Ask them, like open up conversation. It's a little bit easier for me. I'm super extroverted, so I've been doing this. Like I always ask questions, but I think if you're looking at getting like trying quote unquote up your coffee game to try specialty coffee, the single best investment you can make to making better coffee at home is getting a decent coffee grinder at home. I think I know like Chris like talks about like how are you not weighing your coffee every time. I think it's like for me it's a big thing is like it's the best way is to because as soon as you grind the coffee, we love that smell when you first grind the coffee. You go to like you love that smell. Part of that is you love that because it's getting all of its aromatic compounds are coming out, like and everything, and that happens so rapidly that after an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, like it's going. The flavor, like all those flavor notes that are in the coffee are going away. Yeah. So single best investment is buy like a decent burr grinder at home and grind the coffee right before you brew it. I think that's going to change the way, even if you're continuing to like, even if you're not getting specialty coffee, but like you're getting like Julian that's getting the con coconut from HEB. If you're not already buying whole bean and grinding at home, if you start doing that, you're going to start noticing a difference every day in your flavor, like the coffee and how you experience it.
Definitely, so. Yeah. I was, probably. So 2010 is when I first started grinding coffee because I remember I moved to Fort Leonard Wood and I couldn't find the whole bean Dunkin' Donuts at the commissary. Like that's what I wanted. I wanted the whole bean Dunkin' Donuts. I mean, it's good coffee. I mean, it's consistent, good coffee for what it is. And I couldn't find it in whole bean. I had to get it ground and I was so upset. But that's a whole different thing. I would definitely say that the scale when I started weighing coffee was the game changer. When I started weighing the coffee out before I ground it was the game changer for me. And I've got 3 different scales and I got to get a new microphone for my camera to do the video, but the scoop method, it works okay, but I can take 3 different coffees and get a scoop and they're all going to weigh different and they're all going to brew different and they're all going to have different results. And a lot of times you see people that are complaining, oh, this coffee's not strong enough or this coffee is too strong. Well, did you weigh it? Well, no, I just did a scoop. Well, what's your scoop? Well, it's the one that came with the coffee pot. Well, how big is that? I don't know. It's a scoop. If you're spending money on the coffee, get a scale.
And yeah, let alone is it a heaping scoop? Is it a level scoop?
Oh. Like, I've got 6 different scoops over here ready for the video. It's ridiculous the different sizes that they are. So we hit that. Is there a particular method that if you said this is the way I'm going to brew coffee that you can't that you won't give up, that you wouldn't give up? Like if we were going to take one thing away from you, what would that one thing not be to brew coffee?
Thing, or I'm kind of understanding,
Like
Chris. I don't want to.
espresso or a pour over, like a
Oh,
V60 or a Chemex or what?
like you know, I love different types of pour overs, but if I don't have the ability to have an espresso, you're just ruining my life. You're making life unbearable. Like I need to be able to have espresso, as
Is there
even
is
if
there
it's not
something?
every. Yeah.
Is there one that you recommend for budget friendly home espresso machine?
Um, the Breville. Breville makes a pretty decent one. I'm trying to remember which model it was. You can look on the I think it's is it SDA, but Breville makes a really decent espresso machine. Um, that's something actually I'm interested in trying to do, is trying to help people like that might be interested in doing espresso at home, on how to do that, because it can be daunting at first, but it's definitely doable for the average person. But I like, for me, espresso is like, I like my wife and I did our honeymoon in Italy, and we had espresso 3 times, 4 times a day,
Oh,
every day of our honeymoon. It was either macchiato or espresso. So yeah,
nice, nice. Uh, so, and I'll need these links from you uh,
yeah,
to go later. But where else other than Roasters Marketplace and ZelieBeanCoffee.com, right? That's your website,
jelly beans. Yep. Yeah.
ZelieBeansCoffee.com.
Yep.
Where else can we find you here local around town for my Houston people?
So right now, because I've mostly been a guest roaster at places, I'm not at any. None of my retail bags are being sold anywhere right now. I'm working on a couple different locations that I will be, hopefully within the next week or two will be live, and that people will be able to do that. One will be a central location in Houston. One will probably be down here in Missouri City, Sugarland area, and but I don't want to speak prematurely just yet on that.
Okay.
But Fixed Coffee Bar has had my coffee. They like have a rotating list of guest coffee roasters. It's FIX Coffee Bar here in Houston, off of Montrose. No, Westheimer near Montrose. Another one that's had my coffee has been Slowpoke. They have 2 locations, about to open a third location. I'm talking with them again about possibly having my coffee on their espresso bar soon. And Through Good Coffee in the Heights
Yep.
is amazing. They've had my coffee. I'll probably be talking with Johnny over there soon about seeing about working me back in the rotation. But I'm looking at a couple shops that will looking at having me as their main coffee supplier soon. So
Awesome. Awesome. We've got a question coming up. I'm
saw
going to
that.
put it up on the screen right here. If you were cold brew a batch of coffee, what roast would you use and what water to coffee ratio?
The water to coffee ratio, I think, is still like a 1 to 15. Well, coffee to water, 1 to 15. And the I did a lot of cold brew for my home, especially during summertime, because my wife and I like to have cold brew throughout the day. And the type of coffee can vary, like depending on what you like. I think cold brew. I think personally, I like a little bit more of a fruity coffee, so I tend to prefer going like African coffees. Though the best cold brew I ever did was a Nicaraguan coffee that just had some really good nutty notes and just had a very clean, smooth flavor to it. My brother-in-law actually fell in love with that Nicaraguan coffee as a cold brew, and he likes to that's his main thing.
And I'm trying to find a link here for you as well, Brett. He said I was recently. Hold on, I'll pull it back here.
But you agree with what? I said a lot.
Yeah. So I've been my go-to source lately has been James Hoffman's YouTube channel. He does a fantastic job
Yeah.
producing the videos. He does a fantastic job explaining. So I'm going to put a link in here to his YouTube video. I don't have time to go in here and watch it right quick, but I'm willing to bet that James has some different stuff to say on coffee ratios for different things on this video. If you like it, please like and subscribe his channel. He has awesome information on his channel as well. So
Oh
I
yeah.
have a cold brew coffee pot, but I haven't messed with it since I got into this.
I think I got the Hario. I have the Hario tall glass one, but then I just got to the point because it wasn't ever enough for us.
Yeah.
I just got to a point of putting it in a bucket like this, clear bucket like this, grind the coffee up pretty coarsely, like a French press, put it in there, pour the water over it, and just pour it. And then when you're done, pour it through a strainer, and then second time pouring it through a cheesecloth.
Yeah.
Then you don't have to have a bunch of extra stuff.
Yep.
Like there's no need for fancy stuff for brewing cold brew. Cold brew coffee literally is to be the easiest coffee to brew, and it's so delicious. I love it.
And I've been doing the last ones I've been making. I've been using my AeroPress to just do it right over, do it hot, do it at about 180, do it right over ice, and the ice melts into it, and it's really good.
Do you do like a higher concentrate, basically? You do like a maybe like a 1:18 ratio type of thing, 1:19 ratio, or?
Well, actually, usually between 20 and 30 grams of coffee to 100 to 100 grams of water.
Is that including ice?
No, it's not including ice.
Okay.
So it's basically just doing a espresso shot on top of the ice cubes and then melting it down. It's really good, depending on what it is. I hope we answered your question.
Brett, thanks for watching, by the way.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for tuning in. So, what are your plans? What are your plans from here? We've talked about it a little bit, and then where are we going?
I'm ambitious. I'm crazy. I'm a little bit crazy. I'm ambitious. When I get into something, I really dive in, and part of that is because it's not just about me, and it's not. I'm not here to make a ton of money. I'm here with a mission to try to help families in these farms, and I think the best way to do that is through especially coffee and education, such as what you're doing here, Chris. It's like trying to get as many people exposed to like just different ideas and just different concepts. I I think I think 3 and 5 year plans. So my 5 year goal is to become sounds crazy, but a nationally recognized coffee roaster. That if you know specialty coffee, and you see Zelie Beans Coffee, it would not like you would know what that is. That's my hope. Like there's some great nationally recognized coffee roasters from all over the country. Onyx is like one that I look up to in a lot of ways. Amazing coffees, great, doing great stuff. I just hope to be able to be known specifically, not just as great coffee, but that the roaster that you know who the growers are, and not just the coffee.
But you've definitely hit it on your bag. Your branding on your bag was one of the first things I noticed when we first started talking. Your bag's going to stand out. Your bag is.
Yeah. Can I show them off? I have.
Pull one. I'll get one up there. Around. Yeah, go ahead.
There we go. My bright red. Oh, this is too much light.
There's too much light.
There we go. There we go. There you go. So I'm going to brag a little bit. This coffee packaging is 100% carbon neutral. So that means that whatever carbon output they use to produce the packaging, they invest to create a carbon neutral, so into negative carbon emission initiatives. And this is to be 100% consistent. if I care about the coffee growers, and if you care about these people, what are we doing to help make sure the environment is as good as possible for them? And whether or not you're liberal or conservative, it doesn't matter. It's like what matters is that we're doing whatever we can to make it as good as possible for the growers and everything. And so in bright red, I want to be approachable and recognizable. So Zelie Beans Coffee. I'm a little awkward. You're welcome.
You're good. You're good. It's awesome. Well, thanks for being on the show tonight, Joseph. And thanks for, we started talking back before Thanksgiving on this. And, one day we just finally, I think it was probably our third or fourth phone call, and we'd spent 3 or 4 hours talking to each other on the phone. And it was finally, you're like, let's do it. Let's just go. And so you were actually my first official roaster. That helped spur a lot of people to get on board when they're like, hey, Chris has already got, he's got 1, he's got 2, he's got 3, now other roasters are out there seeing the YouTube channel come out and watching me interview people and talk to people, and they're like, tomorrow I'm going to have 3 or 4 more people text me and say, hey, let's do it, let's go.
I'm excited to be. I'm excited to work with anyone and everyone that has that similar mission of trying to spread this news and this information, because it's an important job to do.
Yeah. Yes.
Brett, you are right. I turn on the live comments as well, Chris, so I can see the comments on my side.
Yeah, the bag.
The bag does have a great feel to it. The texture to it, it's not like a regular bag. So that means you need to go to Roasters Marketplace and order a bag of Zelie Beans Coffee so you can feel the bag.
Definitely. One last thing before we get going here. Joseph, thanks again for coming on. It was a pleasure to speak with you. Thanks for coming on board Roasters Marketplace. Next week, February 6th, while we're already there, my next episode's going to be February 6th at 8 p.m. We're interviewing the guys from Atypical Roasting out of Little Rock, Arkansas. They've been on board for a while. They do some great stuff there with farmers markets, and we'll be getting them live on the show on Thursday nights. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Joseph, once again, thank you very much for jumping on board and spending part of your evening with us.
So excited to be doing this.
And thanks for everybody that joined in and watched tonight. If you've enjoyed the show, like it, share it, please, on Facebook. If you're on YouTube, go follow my channel, subscribe to my channel, hit the bell. That means a whole lot to where we're ranking in videos. If you're on Facebook, go to YouTube and do the same. So really appreciate everybody coming out, taking the time to watch us down the road. We've got a lot of great stuff coming from Roasters Marketplace. We really appreciate it, Joseph. Thank you, man.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
Bye.